So good afternoon, Your Excellency, Prof. Sarah Ayang Agbo, the Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology, and currently the acting chairperson of the African Union Commission. Very big cap that you are wearing for the whole week. Yeah, our distinguished speakers chosen across the geographical zones of the African continent. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be a speaker at this webinar. And to all our participants that have joined, and we're waiting for other participants to also join as well. My name is Esther Akinlabi. I currently serve as the director of the Pan-African University for Life and Earth Sciences Institute in Ibadan, in Nigeria. Welcome to series number 2 of the Women in Science webinar. This is a concept idea of Her Excellency, Prof. Sarah Ayang Agbo. This webinar is focused on women empowerment during and post-COVID-19. The coronavirus pandemic has continued to ravage the entire world, and as at today, there are over 44 million cases across the world and over 1 million deaths. And some countries are now experiencing second waves of infections. And on the African continent, we have had over 1 million cases and there are over 29,000 deaths. It's sad to note that while the whole world and Africa still grappling with the pandemic, the last few weeks, Africa has had unrest with the protests erupting in some countries across the African continent. And our thoughts and our sympathy to the families and friends of people that have lost their loved ones, both to the pandemic and also now to the unrest as well. With that background, I would now like to welcome Her Excellency, Prof. Sarah Ayang Agbo, to kindly give her opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, esteemed panelists, it is my pleasure on behalf of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Dr. Musa Faki Mahamat, to welcome you to this second in the series of webinar meeting on women in science, an occasion to update us on how women around Africa are contributing towards the fight against COVID-19. The theme for today's series number 2 webinar is Women Empowerment During and Post-COVID-19. Specifically, we shall be looking at the impact of COVID-19 on various sectors of the economy. I would like to join my voice with that of Professor Esther Akinlabi to commiserate with families who have lost their loved ones due to COVID-19 and families who have also lost their loved ones due to the unrest that is happening across Africa. We pray that the souls of the departed will rest in peace and the families, that God will console the various families. The unanticipated pandemic that suddenly closed down our usual world to a new normal started locally like a drop in an ocean in late 2019 in China, and in less than a year has spread like a wildfire, spreading across nations of the world. No continent escaped this virus. Worldwide, there have been over 1 million deaths, with more than 35 million people infected and over 24 million recovered worldwide. We have had a first wave of the pandemic, and just as we are getting back to a near normal life again, we are again experiencing another escalating second wave, leaving the nations of the world with a singular agenda of reducing COVID-19 to zero. The message, therefore, is only if we end the pandemic everywhere can we end the pandemic anywhere. COVID-19 has caused an unprecedented impact on nations' economy, people's lives, families, and communities, directly and indirectly. More than 1 million people have died in less than a year directly from COVID-19. In nations where data collection is important, indirect increases in morbidity and mortality resulting from movement restrictions imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic are recorded and have been identified as a public health concern. Deaths registered in England and Wales exceeded the 5-year average by almost 50,000 during the first 2 months of lockdown, which started in March 23rd, 2020. Confirmed COVID-19 accounted for the majority of deaths. The remaining excess could reflect undiagnosed COVID-19 or alternatively deaths from unrelated conditions. Similarly, in the USA, only 65% of excess deaths during March and April 2020 were attributed to COVID-19. Though we can quantify the economic impact, I don't think that the psychological and social impact is quantifiable. Can we quantify the emotional traumas from loss of loved ones? Can any amount of money bring back the millions that have died from COVID-19, the talents and potentials that died with these people? For us in Africa, COVID-19 is fast eroding our cultural and community values that has kept us united over the years. With the COVID-19 protocols of social and physical distancing, I can only imagine when life will return to normal again, when we'll be able to relate freely again with one another. Schools have started to reopen, but how do the kids go to school? The kids cannot hold themselves as they want to embrace their colleagues they've not seen for 6, 5, 8 months. And they're telling them, don't touch, don't touch, don't touch. How do we cope this? How do we effect the social distancing amongst peoples who are less than 4 years or 5 years old? It is very difficult. Our governments, like in other countries of the world, took very strict actions aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19. Although in many countries that I see and I've been to, I've seen that the PPS are not really executed as much as I would love them to do. These actions included a ban on all public gatherings, the indefinite closure of public institutions like churches, schools, and community gatherings for weddings, funerals, suspension of air travels, shutdowns of cities across countries, thus confining movement of people, and the launch of testing programs to identify, isolate, and treat infected persons. Although these actions were aimed at averting the spread of the virus, mitigate its impact on the population in the short term, and pave the way to addressing the long-term social, cultural, political, and economic consequences, these actions, unfortunately, had its negative impact on citizens, on cultures, and the societies. UNESCO 2020 report on social, economic, and cultural impact of COVID-19 echoed that the sociocultural norms and values that are at the center of African societies now face severe risk of disappearing into oblivion. It underscored that the ban on public gatherings, for instance, in response to the pandemic, has had consequent impact on family and community life, increased the possibility of fracturing relationships and undermining trust between states and their citizens, with long-term implications for cohesion and social harmony. Speaking on economic impact, many jobs have been lost, widening the gap in social class, more and more people falling below the poverty line, either as a result of loss of jobs or collapse of business. We see a remodeling of the society, and the fear continues even after COVID-19, as many employers have discovered that they can actually work from home with limited persons or use robots. Distinguished participants, while we wish that this pandemic comes to an end, we must have a future outlook for Africa. With our already high rate of unemployment, huge youth population, what plans do we have in place to secure the future of our children? Because the fight against COVID-19 is our mutual responsibility. This afternoon, we shall be listening to how women across Africa are empowered during and what plans are in place to transcend post-COVID-19. We must recognize that quite a lot is going on around the continent by different institutions and groups. At the level of the African Union, through the Department of Economic Affairs, we have analyzed the impact of COVID-19 on the African economy, and a couple of post-pandemic actions are put forward for our governments. Some of such actions include: 1, the need to diversify and transform their economies by strengthening the productive capacity of African private sector to transform raw materials locally. 2, increase in agricultural production to enhance the food value chains to meet domestic and continental consumptions. But the challenge is, how do we get our youth interested in agriculture? I think Paolesi will have an answer to this for us. We believe that the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Zone and financial institutions is the right direction to achieve industrialization as quickly as possible that could create employment. Added to this effort, the African Union Scientific, Technical and Innovation Council in March launched a study in response to the socio-economic impact of the COVID-19 in Africa. The study assembled its best resources to see how best to ameliorate the impact of the COVID-19. This study is still ongoing by a working group in the 3 domains of economic, sociology, and the cross-cutting with their actions and interventions to advise policy and decision makers. Distinguished fellow women and participants, while we are fighting to stop the pandemic, mitigate its devastating effects, we must also lay a solid foundation for long-term recovery. I believe that our deliberations this afternoon will pave the way for the future. I thank you all for accepting our invitation, and I wish us all a very productive insights and discussions during this webinar. I also want to extend sincere gratitude to Dr. Idinoba and Dr. Mashlin Hambani, that is the Division of Science, Technology, Innovation, and our dear sister, Professor Esther Kilabi, for putting all this together. Together, we are stronger, and together, we make an impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Really appreciate your speech, always inspiring. And I fully agree with you that Paolesi is answering the question across the African continent to get youth involved and to embrace agriculture. Thank you very much, ma'am. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And appreciate your talk this afternoon. So thank you very much to all our distinguished speakers once again, and to all participants. We hope other participants will join us along the line. And please note that we have interpreters for English and French. They are available online, and they are available to assist throughout the webinar. I will now introduce our first speaker for this afternoon. He is Prof. Amal Amin. He's a professor at the National Research Center in Egypt. Over to you, Prof. Amal Amin. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I would like a good afternoon. At first, I would like to thank the organizers, to thank Her Excellency Professor Sarah, to thank Professor Issa, and other organizers. I will share my screen. Can you see my screen? Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Please proceed. Thank you.
I will obtain this chance to speak about social impact assessment and rights of women generally, because they are not clear for several nations and countries, even during COVID-19. But we have to clarify the fundamentals about that at first. So that if I will go back about the recent history of women's rights in 1949 at the recent history, because there are several initiatives before that, but in recent history, in 1848, it began in New York, in USA, where first women's rights convention, where they demanded civil, social, political, and religious rights rights for women in the declaration, where they said that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. Afterward, there are several global initiatives followed till 1949, where the United Nations was born. In 1946, the UN General Assembly, where American Eleanor Roosevelt famously reads an open letter to women of the world, urging for their contribution and increased involvement in national and international level. In 1946, the Commission on the Status of Women became the first global intergovernmental body. Then in 2010, UN Women became the global United Nations Agency for Women's Rights and the Global Forum to speak about women and women's rights and gender equality and so on. In 1970, the first International Women's Year and the first UN Global Conference for Women as well in Mexico. In 1995, the famous Beijing Declaration at the Fourth World Conference for Women with the famous roadmap under 12 critical areas to advance women's rights. In 2000, UN Millennium Declaration with a roadmap or a plan of 15-year deadline. Then in 2015, the world developed its next transformative agenda or sustainable development goals appear. Women, if we talk about women's rights actually are human rights, so that they include equal rights, opportunities, including jobs, money, and access to resources, equal sharing of responsibilities in family between women and men, eradication of poverty based on economic growth, but sustainable economic growth involving women share in all aspects of life, involvement of women in social development as well, equal opportunities and full equal participation of women, and the right of all women to control aspects of their health issues, particularly on fertility, education, including science and technology and other aspects. We have several facts like the women are fundamental force for leadership. They are also main partners in conflict resolution and the promotion of lasting peace at all levels. Empowerment and advancement of women will be through development of gender-sensitive programs and policies, effective implementation and follow-up of gender-inclusive policies is a complete responsibility between all partners, including international organizations, governments, NGOs, communities, and so on, so that the women's rights are a shared responsibility between all partners. Generally, any project or action or industry should have social impact, economic impact, environmental impact, and health impact. The full assessment of human rights impacts may include, at first, the assessment should include the application of international human rights standards and ensuring that the assessment captures not only the business itself, but the consequences of the business, including the process, the products, and so on, ensuring that the process applies the human rights, non-discrimination policies, inclusion, participation of women, and so on. Also facilitating accountability through analysis of the rules and capacities of the rights holders, ensuring that the evaluation of impacts, including human rights considerations. Social impact assessment, if we can consider social impact assessment, it will include social analysis and participation. The definition, the global definition of social assessment, that it includes the process of analyzing, monitoring, and managing the intended and unintended social consequences, both positive and negative, of planned interventions, policies, programs, and any social change process. Social impact may include effect on type, standard of life, health care and well-being, environment, society, political status, human relations. Social impact may include, it's very iterative process and may include several steps. Begin stakeholder analysis, involve stakeholders, then identify social factors, then analyze data and assess priorities, and develop plans in consultation with stakeholders, ensure capacity, adjust and apply with the stakeholder, consider process, program context. Then the social analysis, come to the social analysis process. The social analysis includes demographic factors, socioeconomic determinants, social organization, socio-political context, needs and values, institutional capacity, in order to account for social differences, access, impact and risks, mitigate adverse impacts, and build capacity. The famous action for women's rights, I think it's the Sustainable Development Goals, because it includes the gender equality. If we look to all the Sustainable Development Goals, we will find that women are main partners in all actions, including eradication of poverty, clean energy, clean environment, and so on. So that according to UN Women reports, women are not only more affected by these problems, but they are they may be considered as main partner to solve these problems, to have some ideas, to possess ideas to solve these problems, and so on. And gender discrimination is a disadvantage for the human being and for the world, because they make humanity back from development, from sharing in development of the total societies, and so on, because of gender inequality. Achieving gender equality and women's empowerment is integral to each of the 17 goals. We will get to justice, inclusion, and so on by ensuring the rights of women and the gender equality. We have several facts that we still have countries lack laws protecting women from domestic violence. 19% of women and girls aged 15 to 49 have experienced domestic violence or sexual violence. 650 million women married under the age of 18. Women do 3 times as much unpaid care with respect to men. Women hold just 23 of parliamentary seats. Only 53% of women married or a union make their own decisions with respect to contraceptive use or health care. Steps to get gender equality. We have several steps according to the definitions and the reports of UN to have gender equality. At first, end all forms of discrimination against women and girls everywhere. Eliminate all forms of violence in private sectors, in public, and everywhere. Eliminate all harmful practices such as child abuse, early and forced marriage. Recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work through the provision of public services with respect to women and men. Ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in political, economic, and public life. Ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, as agreed in accordance to all agreements of the United Nations. Not recently, in 2014, there was action plan till 2021 for UNESCO according to cultural relations and education and so on, that to save gender equality, we have to ensure that gender equality is a constituent element of global education agenda at all levels. Equality of outcome, especially in post-2015 agenda, identifying gender-specific targets and timelines with the framework of inclusion, quality, and lifelong learning opportunities, ensuring that international science cooperation of peace and sustainability allows for representation of voices for women and men together, ensuring that policies for sustainable development are gender transformative by inclusion both women and men together in capacity building efforts, supporting efforts by member states to save gender-inclusive cultural events and cultural inclusion in all aspects of life. Also ensuring that processes supporting social transformations and intercultural dialogue acknowledge and take into consideration rules, contribution and voices for women and men together. Also supporting the development by member states of cultural policies and respect gender equality, ensuring the freedom of expression to all, irrespective of gender and other social aspects. Last, I will say, like Katie Kelvin said from United Nations, that girls are one of the most powerful forces for change in the world. When their rights are recognized, needs are met, and their voices are heard, they drive positive change in their families, their communities, and the world. These are the references. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Amal. Really appreciate your talk this afternoon, taking us through the history of women's rights, Eleanor Roosevelt, and the Beijing Declaration, very popular, equal rights, equal opportunities for women, women as fundamental force in leadership, and full assessment of human rights, social analysis, and bringing us to remind us as well regarding the SDGs, the action plan, women and the SDG number 5 on gender equality, and also the action plan of UNESCO. Thank you very much. I believe that these are all eye-openers, and we've made all our notes, and we'll be coming up with a summary at the end of this webinar. Thank you very much for your thought-provoking talk this afternoon. Highly appreciated. Thank you. On that note, I will now like to call on our second speaker. She is Dr. Katarina Kreppel. She's an epidemiologist at One Aspire Pan-African Program, Tanzania. Over to you, Dr. Kreppel.
À vous la parole, docteur.
Hello, good afternoon. Let me share my screen.
Bonjour, je vais projeter mon intervention à l'écran.
Okay, yes, first of all, I would like to thank Her Excellency for the honor to be allowed to present today, and also to Professor Akinlabi for the invitation and the organization of this webinar. So thank you very much. Today, I would like to talk about the impact of the environment on African women or women in Africa during and post-COVID-19.
Pendant et après la COVID-19.
Just a second, here we go. First, I would like to look at the effect of COVID on women's lives to understand the link to environmental threats. And then I would like to look closer at the environmental factors affecting the disease, the vulnerabilities, especially of women, and their exposure to disease. And finally, I would like to look at how to prevent the next pandemic. COVID allows us to see an intensified gender inequality with women, left to take on the majority of extra housework, the care for children out of school, homeschooling, caring for the sick and elderly, and all the extra work they have to achieve because of COVID-19. We see an underrepresentation in decision-making positions, even though we have many female scientific, political, and economic experts in Africa. And during COVID-19, unfortunately, we also see an underrepresentation in the media, where often the opinions of less qualified men are preferred to those of expert women. With that, of course, we are losing a lot of the perspectives that women have. We see that many women have to work harder while earning even less. Job losses affect women more. All across Africa, many women work in the informal sector and in unprotected positions in the service and tourism industry. Lockdown measures, while they are trying to curb the spread of COVID-19, unfortunately, very often reduce the time available to women to work. They're reducing the customers, and we also know that domestic violence is on the rise. Less income then renders women often more vulnerable to infection, not just to COVID, but also other pathogens, as their health is compromised and they have to resort to crowded transport conditions, crowded living conditions, often caring for sick family members, as well as less nutrition and less healthcare. It is feared that many girls that were affected by school closures just as much as the boys, but it is feared that the girls will not get back into school after schools are opening again, simply due to the limited income of their families, of relocations from urban to rural areas, for example, and because of the need of extra help. Many families resort to subsistence farming and leave for rural areas, where the type of work exposes particularly women and children to zoonotic pathogens. But COVID-19 is not the only threat. Unfortunately, and there has always been an environmental impact on women's lives. First of all, the pandemic caused by a zoonotic pathogen shows the increasing threat that we are facing from the overexploitation of the environment. Women are most vulnerable and most exposed, especially during this time. Threats are caused by climate change, and that includes, for example, crop loss due to flooding and droughts, shorter planting seasons, limited grazing area for livestock, and increased diseases in livestock. Environmental degradation means bad soil, limited arable land, and therefore the need to expand cropland and grazing areas. Resource depletion we see with less fish, less firewood available nearby, less water, and bad soils. And that often means that people have to work harder, walk further, and cope with less income, less nutrition, and less healthcare. Food losses are intensified by the COVID pandemic at the moment because travel is risky and or restricted. Money for fertilizers and pesticides is limited, and the economies overall all over Africa are struggling. And women will be at the front line in preventing the next food pandemic that has been foretold by the UN, because women are the ones growing crops, raising livestock, selling and purchasing food in local markets, and dealing with the nutritional needs of their households. Women will be there to fight for avoiding this hunger pandemic that will follow the COVID-19 pandemic, making them more vulnerable and exposed to new and existing pathogens. But we want to know what the mechanism is. So we see that in many African countries, up to 60% of farmers are women, and this proportion is rising right now. Unfortunately, women often lack equal access to quality seeds, to fertilizers, pesticides, good land, microcredit, technical advice, and new technologies. This is often due to their limited mobility. And their limited mobility is not just due to limited funds, it's also due to the other responsibilities, especially during the COVID-19 crisis, as we said before, taking care of the sick, the elderly, homeschooling, taking care of the children. And because of that, because of all these factors, more land is needed to actually receive the same amount of crop. So many resort to slash and burn, logging, and land use change. Now here we have an example where we can look at the cropland expansion, because more land is needed due to population growth, unsuitable land due to climate change, and because of degradation. Because of all these reasons, we see this. In 2015, there has been a picture done showing the cropland and grazing areas here in white. And unfortunately, in just 4 years before the COVID pandemic hit the world, this area has increased so that we now have a cropland grazing belt across Africa between Angola and Zambia, for example. This means that people are intruding into formerly undisturbed ecosystems in this way, however, and therefore increases the exposure to new pathogens. However, in order to feed the growing populations, there is not much of a different option to do so. So what can we do to prevent the next pandemic? And what are the reasons for the problems we see that were caused by COVID-19? For that, we need to go and have a look at the 7 major anthropogenic drivers of zoonotic disease emergence. First of all, one major driver is the increasing demand for animal protein. We are facing unsustainable agricultural intensification, increased use and exploitation of wildlife, unsustainable utilization of natural resources. That also includes urbanization, land use change, and extractive industries. We have more and more travel and transportation, changes in food supply chains, and of course, above all of this are also the threats and the effects of climate change. And the reason why these factors are also bad is because of the connection between humans, animals, and their environment. So I would like to go a little bit further into this. So here you can see a woman preparing bushmeat for her family. Now what we see here is that we have a steady pathogen flow between livestock, wildlife, peridomestic animals such as rats and bats, birds and foxes, and all other wild animals living close to us, and between those animals and humans. Unfortunately, though, women are often the ones that are at highest risk in their daily life. Because we have a natural ability to take care, traditionally, women are the ones that are taking care of livestock, collect water and wood, buy food from the markets, eliminate pests around the house, and in many countries prepare bushmeat and buy and sell at markets where we can also find rodents and other peridomestic animals. So these are the connections between wildlife, peridomestic wildlife, livestock, and us humans. And of course, wherever you have a connection like this, you can also share pathogens. So what are the links between health and the environment? Now, over the past few decades, more than 60% of emerging infectious diseases that affect people actually originated from wildlife or livestock. Now, how was it before? Why is it now worse than it was before? And how are women exposed now more than ever? Now, I want to talk about the dilution effect. So what was the case before exploitation of the environment and before population growth and the need to feed many more mouths and before the effects of climate change? We had a so-called dilution effect. Most pathogens that are maintained in animals are in animals with which humans normally have little contact. And when animals live in good habitats that provide enough food and shelter for many different species, they don't have a reason to travel further around. They do not have a reason to come anywhere close to human habitation. And in an ecosystem like this, the proportion of infected animals is often very low because pathogens are host specific. That means that they only affect one species or a couple of species, a small number of species. But these animals, they are not mixing, they're not roaming very far. And therefore, healthy ecosystems translate into resilient and healthy human societies, where this exchange of pathogens is very, very limited. However, now we are dealing with biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation, and that means we have increased contact with humans, between humans and animals. Because there is reduced food, animals, wild animals, are forced to travel further, and so is livestock to find enough grazing. The problem with the wild animals, though, is that competition between these animals favors resilient animals, and specifically those with short generation times that are reproducing fast. and that are also comfortable in human proximity. And this is the case for rural and urban areas alike. So therefore, we will end up with more rodents, more insects, more foxes, more bats in rural and urban areas. So here we can see a public health warning from Côte d'Ivoire asking the population to stop the bushmeat trade and consumption. However, this affects women because the trade is a source of income and protein for many women and families. So again, COVID-19 exposes another problem. Of course, eating bushmeat and trading in bushmeat puts women and everybody else, their families, at risk of being infected by another zoonotic pathogen. However, if there's a lack of protein, then of course there's not much choice these women have. What are the other ways that women are increasingly exposed to pathogens? We have an expansion of arable land for the reasons that I detailed before. We have women taking a lot of responsibility in farming, especially when they're the ones that are losing their jobs first. They take care of livestock. They're the ones to collect water and wood. They're in urban areas very often exposed to pollution. They live in crowded conditions now, very often with sick and the elderly that they take care of. They travel in bad conditions and cramped conditions, also because funds are low now. They are involved in the trade and preparation of bushmeat. And one big issue is also they have a lack of information. They have affected health. We know that over 60% of women in Africa suffer from anemia, for example. And women also have a lack of protective clothing, for example, when they go into the bush to get firewood. Now, for those that are interested, this same type of transmission was seen with COVID-19. So the origin of the coronaviruses that affect humans, the three most severe coronaviruses, was in each case the bat. These bats that can live in close contact with humans, that can travel very far distances, have transmitted to an intermediate host, the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome. In this case, it was camels in the Middle East. Camels are kept in large herds, and the mode of transmission then to the final host, the human, was the close contact between the animals and the livestock keepers. And the same happened with SARS-CoV, with the civet cat. That also was due to people eating the civet cat or keeping them as pets. And this time there is there's a lot of certainty now that the current COVID-19 pandemic also originated in bats and came to humans via the pangolin trade and the pangolin consumption. But most importantly now, we need to think about what we can do. Now we can see that a multitude of underlying problems that were always there have now been enhanced by the current epidemic. And in a way, this is our chance to tackle the threats faced from a degraded environment, because the next pandemic is just around the corner. Scientists have predicted pandemics for years, zoonotic pandemics. However, we also need to make sure that we increase food production to feed future generations. And the priority for us at the moment is to protect our most vulnerable members of society. And in this case, it is women and children. And for this, it is time for African women to have a voice and also to use it, and for us to empower women as much as we can so that they can have a say in their future. And here are my references. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kreppel. Katarina, really appreciate your talk this afternoon, highlighting the fact that women always carry the extra burden. They're vulnerable, and are vulnerable, and they're always on the front line. And in this case now, that women are also in the front line of preventing the food pandemic. I love that, your acronym of food pandemic. And then you also call it hunger pandemic as well, that we need to try and prevent that. You also alluded to the fact that women are multidisciplinary. We are teachers at home and at work. We are farmers. We are the cook. We are the professionals, and all over the whole, all over the place. Alluded also to how to prevent the next pandemic. That was highly insightful for me, and I believe to all participants as well. The major anthropogenic drivers of zoonotic disease emergence, and also the study of the biosphere and the domestic landscape. The links between the health and the environment was also key, and also a need for us as women and everyone actually to try and limit our exposures to pathogens, and bats being the origin of the SARS. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your talk and look forward to engaging more with you. Thank you. To continue this webinar this afternoon, I will now bring on board our third speaker, Professor Mary Abukutsa Onyango. She is a professor and scientist on African indigenous vegetables. Over to you, ma'am, Prof. Mary Abukutsa Onyango. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wish to appreciate Her Excellency, Professor Sarah Anyang Agbo. I thank you, the organizer, Professor Akinlabi, for this opportunity to share my ideas on the topic. So I would like to share my screen before I proceed. So thank you very much again. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. Please proceed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. As the other speakers have said, we need to empower women. My topic, I'm going to now pick up from where Dr. Catherine left. I want to discuss the most powerful tool we can use to empower women. And this is going to cover pre-COVID, during, and future plans. And I want to mainly share my reflections from my experience dealing with empowering women. First and foremost, I want to say that although women and girls make up a significant proportion of the population in the fields of research, science, technology, and innovation in Kenya and a few African countries, there is a need to discuss the most powerful tool for women empowerment to ensure their contribution to sustainable development, especially during this time of COVID and thereafter. Now, one of the most effective ways of doing it is mentoring and using mentors. Basically, a mentor is a person whose behavior, example, or success is or can be emulated by others, especially the younger people, but not always, because even older people can be mentored. So mentoring basically is a personal developmental relationship in which a more experienced person or more knowledgeable person helps a less experienced or less knowledgeable person. So in this case, if someone knows more about even COVID than the other, we can be able to share or can mentor the other to do the right thing as is guided. There are several types of mentoring. There is informal mentoring, where there is no structure as such. There is formal mentoring. There is peer mentoring. There is Christian mentoring, scientific mentoring, and professional mentoring. And I would like to add mentoring during this type of COVID, focusing on what to do, on what people know about COVID, and then what to do next. So mentoring can be categorized in various ways. Techniques used in mentoring, from my experience, are several, but I'll highlight some of them for the sake of this discussion this afternoon. Talking, and discussions is one of the ways in which you can mentor somebody. Demonstrating and exhibiting. If you want to ask somebody that wear a mask or don't wear a mask, you demonstrate it, or how to keep distance, you demonstrate it or exhibit whatever you are doing. Being an example, so that when you walk around and you see somebody's not following the rules, use it as an example. When people see you doing these things, then you find that it's going to have an impact on the people. Empowering and inspiring, encouraging, informing or sharing information, or networking. When it comes to empowering, inspiring, and encouraging, we know that people are losing lives, people are losing loved ones, so we need to keep encouraging. That's part of one of the techniques of mentoring, especially women who are most affected and girls. Now, having said that, I want to give some examples, an example of what I have gone through before COVID, during, and after, but largely borrowing and giving empirical evidence how mentoring is a powerful tool to empower women in science and related areas. So I want to talk about a program, maybe some of you know it, it's called African Women in Agriculture, Agricultural Research and Development. It is a Bill Melinda Gates funded program that has been going on for quite some time now. But I'll pick areas that are relevant to me because I was a beneficiary, and I will illustrate how I benefited and how I benefited other women and had a multiplier effect in empowering women. So our program offers tailor-made 2-year fellowship designed to fast track the careers of African women scientists and professionals delivering pro-poor agricultural research and development that benefit rural communities, especially women. So you find that agriculture is a key area in terms of empowering women, because we need food to eat, even during this time of the pandemic, because you have to have food now and in the future. So I did participate this before in the program for almost 10 years, from 2004 to 2014. Now, what happens in this project is there was an award pilot program, which was 2004, just testing if it works. So I participated there by being mentored by a senior member. And normally in this area, you write down your goals, and then you write your activities and walk through with your mentor, so that you are structured, you are actually developing yourself as a professional. What we realized was that most women will do very well in the academic, even research, but when it comes to leadership, they drop out. So we wanted to make the women, when they are in their younger years, they proceed up to leadership position to contribute to the development and to empower other women as well. So the first example was during the award pilot program. After you are mentored, you also mentor somebody else. So I mentored a lady called Beatrice Ekesa from one of our universities in Kenya. Her goal was to get her PhD registered. Of course, she registered and finished. That was 2005, finished and completed in record time. She wanted to be a director of an international organization, but now she had that in mind, she worked her way through her activities and joined Biodiversity International in 2008, which is an international organization, and improved leadership skills, because that's where most women drop out. Now, in this pilot project, which was for 2 years before we got into full blast mentoring program, there are things that I noted that are very important for women, for their empowerment, because a woman can be a good scientist, can be a good scholar, but there are some soft skills that are not well grounded in the most women. So there is a communication skills and people skills. How do we deal with people? How do you relate to people? Especially that's very important now that we are in this situation of COVID. How do we communicate? How do we communicate with people so that we do not look down upon them, or we do not discourage them, even if they are in such a bad situation? facilitation and presentation skills, that's part of communication, and also becoming an active listener, an active, good listener as well. And then not being defensive when receiving feedback, courage and confidence, having emotional intelligence and negotiation skills, because there are things that you need to, how to handle different situations. For example, in this period of COVID-19 and people are affected different ways, we need a lot of emotional intelligence when dealing with people when you are telling them they cannot even visit loved ones, they cannot even share close contact in social places. And then the other issues that were tackled during that time was team leadership skills. And then from that time, someone is able to set goals and become a mentor, mentor others so that you can also have a multiplier effect. And of course, in my case, that's when I moved through the ranks to achieve the goal that I had set during that period. Now, having finished the pilot project, our project, which ended, I think, in 2002 or 2006 or thereabout, we had now the full blast Melinda Gates mentoring program for women agricultural researchers for development. So my first mentee in the full-blown project was Dr. Sheila Cote of University of Nairobi in Kenya. She set her goal to become a professor. That time she was just a senior lecturer, and as I speak now, she's now an associate professor. She's doing a lot of work in agricultural research, especially looking at underground microbes and looking how to produce food with the minimum fertilizers and to ensure that there's food on the table. I know at the moment she's working on groundnuts in Kenya to ensure that there are groundnuts for food security for the vulnerable and other people. She's working with women on the ground. And she's also, one of her desires was to be a director of an influential NGO. I think she's still working on that, and to promote the production of safe foods. But the most important thing I want to say here that she has been mentoring other young women, and she continues to mentor them formally and informally, also having, as I said, a multiplier effect. The next one, the following year, 2009, I mentored Habwe Florence at Maseno University. Her goal was to get her PhD at that time. That has been done, become a professor. She's moving up the ranks and improve leadership skills. And I think she, as we speak now, she's been involved in various projects, especially I've mentored her in working on African indigenous foods, which is my area of research. So mentoring comes in various levels, can be academic, it can be research, it can be also in social issues. So she has taken up that, and she's actually been very instrumental in promoting African indigenous foods, which I believe even during this time, we need to promote it so that we see if we can be able to contribute to the well-being of the affected and infected people of this pandemic. The last one is Anna Ndeje, who is in my university. This one went beyond her dreams. She did a PhD, she got 2 masters and a PhD. Now she's a senior lecturer and she's moving in the right direction. She wanted to improve her leadership skills, and as we speak now, she's one of the members of the university that we work together to mentor other members of staff within, and even students when they come. We talk to them because we mentor even students using the skills of informal mentoring and helping the young girls when they come to the university. My experience with AWARD is I learned to be more committed mentoring due to its effectiveness. It creates diversity in our normal work and learning experience, and I used it then before. I have used it effectively during COVID, and I hope and I believe all of us, if we embrace this, we shall empower more women to contribute to the sustainable development even past the COVID period. This also helped me to reinforce formal and informal mentoring to young scholars in my institution. I have done mentoring in my institution in my country, Africa, and across. And I'm happy to say that when you go out, when you have this tool, wherever you go, it comes naturally to mentor. Until I have even attracted some students from other countries like Uganda, Tanzania, to come and study in my university because of the mentoring, informal mentoring, even when you meet in conferences. So it's a tool that we can actually capitalize on as we talk about empowering women in science. Benefits of our program, maybe this is a repetition. I think I've talked about this one, but for this slide, what I want to say is that mentoring others has a serious and beneficial multiplier effect, especially even the informal one. I have seen it in my students, even in people that I interact with. I even mentor farmers, anybody whom I come across who is a woman and has issues, we've been able to mentor them. This is just some of the activities we're involved in during the mentoring. One of the things that made award stand out is that it makes you visible. It is during this period that, though I had done research for a long time, I became very visible, and even was able to interact with the high caliber people internationally. And here, actually, I was chosen during the award program to display my work to the then Secretary of State of the USA, Hillary Clinton. So she came in 2009 during the period that we had a award program. Now, there are challenges, but we learned that during this period of mentoring, to learn to change, to turn challenges into opportunities. So I'll highlight some of the challenges that girls and women face, some of which have been highlighted by some of the presenters before me. There is the issue of multiple roles and competing goals. In this program, we were told to learn to delegate because most of us want to do everything. So once you have a lot of things to do, you choose what you can do yourself and you do delegation. So that's the important thing that we learned and can be applied during and after. And supportive cultural practices, you know some of them, which have been mentioned before. But what is important here is we were taught and told to develop support groups, whether it's a place of work, whether it's in the family, whether it's in the community. The women actually have thrived on supportive support groups. For example, you find many of the community groups like the ones that people come together and help each other in terms of like table banking in Africa, in Kenya, is very, very important. So these support groups have helped most women, especially at the village level. Another problem has been weak networking and lobbying skills. Women naturally don't go out to find things. They kind of say they will come to me, but after going through this, you are able to actually look out and be more assertive and look for things, make deliberate efforts to network. We're even told how to network and how to interact. If you meet somebody that you think can even fund some of your projects or can help other women on the ground. Negative competition and sabotage. We were told to have a positive attitude and count your blessings and see what you have. Start from where you are and move up. Useful information withheld. This came up. It's very common for useful information, especially if men are in leadership. They don't give women because women don't go in social places in most cases where men go. So you have to be proactive. You have to find negotiation skills and find communication and make a kind of be able to communicate to these men. Now, other issues. Okay, this is for me personally, the death coming. I have brought in that issue because death is happening everywhere because of COVID. If you lose a loved one, sometimes you look at that person and see if he had any values, you relieve their legacy. So these are some of the techniques we can use during this COVID and thereafter, because people will lose a lot of loved ones. And these are some of the things that we came up with. And when my parents died, I think I was in this in this program, and it helped me a lot to overcome because those techniques were being taught. Mentoring women and girls, I continue doing it before and during, especially during this during this COVID period. And what I am doing, I'm using the same techniques I learned during the award program, formal and informal mentoring at any stage I come across. I have had also another mentoring program. You said I've mentored 3 colleagues at my university. I'm involved in mentoring informal, especially in primary schools as we speak now. Schools in Nairobi, in Kenya have opened. So I've gone to some schools to just make sure, like I went to one school, I find the girls didn't have, or the people didn't have masks. I bought them and showed them how to do it. So that's part of mentoring and getting involved at all levels. What's important is we should not just look at the university level. We should start from primary, from the basic, from lower levels. Secondary schools have also done it in 10 schools where we both online and the physical when they open schools, of course, observing the rules of social distancing. At the university has been a continuous thing since I went through this program, undergraduate, postgraduate since 2005. And then young researchers, young professionals who want to grow into a level that they desire after making their goals. So the most important thing here is that sometimes you just use example. Just someone seeing you as a role model encourages all women at all levels. It does not matter what level, all of them need mentoring. Then I have been invited to panel discussions on women empowerment at KEMRI, Kenya Medical Research Institute, NACOSTIC, National Council, National Commission of Science, Technology and Innovation in Kenya, University of Nairobi, Mawazo Institute, which is an NGO. All those, we are talking to people directly through face-to-face, or where with the COVID period, we do it online so that we talk about what I'm talking about today. What is it you have to do when you have these situations? The other thing is capacity building, which is also very key. Capacity building from the ground, the farmers, because I'm an agriculturalist, there's capacity building in researchers, because I am in charge of research at the university and at all levels. And every time we do this, we have a gender policy that every time we do any capacity building, anytime we do research proposals and seeking for funds, we factor in. In fact, in Kenya, we are happy that the constitution requires a third majority. You cannot go beyond a third, so that of either gender. So you have to, it should be a third, 2/3, or 50-50. At worst, it's a third, 2/3. So that also helps to strengthen the balancing of gender. Mentoring others, I cannot emphasize more, because mentoring others formally, informally, has a long lasting. I've got so much feedback from people, even I didn't know I was mentoring, by just sitting with them and sharing your story. Lastly, I want to recommend that mentoring is a necessity to achieve goals. Before COVID, during, and even as we move forward, we must take this tool and use it to empower women. It requires commitment, sacrifice to reap optimal benefits, whether it is informal or formal. It is a learning process for both the mentor and the mentee, and is useful for all spheres of life. AWARD, the program I went through, was and is a good role model as a mentoring program. All of us need mentoring in our lives, especially women. We need to mainstream mentoring in all our programs, institutions, and that is needed now than ever before. Welcome to Kenya. Karibu Kenya. Thank you. Asante.
Wow. Thank you very much, Prof. Mary Abukutsa Oyango. Really appreciate your talk this afternoon. Thank you for taking us through women empowerment, the most powerful tool on mentors and mentoring. You spoke about the types of mentorship, type of mentoring, techniques using mentorship, and a lot of your experience that you have shared with us this afternoon in our mentoring program and also on your USAID PS program. You also spoke about the soft skills, which we don't really take cognizance of, the communication skills, the people skills, and also team leadership skills and so many other skills as well. You also spoke about emotional intelligence, which is very, very important as women and also to men as well. And you also alluded to the fact that as women scientists, we need to take cognizance and take it very, very important to ensure that we mentor women and the young girls. And also that it is a rewarding experience, a multiplier effect at the end of the day. These were real take home for me, and I believe to other participants as well. Turning challenges into opportunities for women and for men alike, I believe that is also important. And the fact that we just cannot do it all alone and be in our little closet, we got to go out there and mentor young women and young girls. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time with us this afternoon and looking forward to more collaboration with you. Thank you very much, Prof. We now move on to our next speaker. We have Dr. Adeola Lubamiji, who is linking up with us all the way from the US. She's a technical advisor in advanced manufacturing in Cummins in USA. Over to you, Dr. Adeola, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me, ma'am. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Please proceed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having me. Today, I'll be talking about 3D printing. Scientifically, we call it additive manufacturing, its value proposition, and how 3D printing is being used around the world, especially now during COVID-19. I want to take us back to the 1800s and talk a little bit about industrial revolution that has happened in the last years before I was born. So the first industrial revolution started in late 1700s and early 1800s. What this brought to us as people includes steam engine, power looming, the ability to use telegraph, and then the first sewing machine was started at this point. From 1800, the use of these 4 items proceeded and helped us to grow in terms of per capita income that people were able to have country by country, and also this enhanced our lives. In the 1900s, we moved from that to being able to have electricity and also have mass production, assembly lines. With the use of assembly line, we could now mass produce things that can get shipped from one location to the other using the steam engines. From 1800 to the 1900, the use of electricity afforded us the opportunity to have the internet, to have computers, and so many things changed over the time. What all of this brought to us is improved connectivity, globalization, and also life expectancy, especially when we got to the 2000s, improved drastically from what it used to be. People die in the 1800s when they're like 30 to 40 years old. What this brought to us is an increased life expectancy that people are able to live up to 74 years old. About 7 to 8 years ago, we moved from the 3rd industrial revolution into the 4th industrial revolution. What does this 4th industrial revolution mean? It means improved connectivity, extremely improved connectivity. It means data-driven manufacturing, that our manufacturing will move from having a whole lot of human interaction to having robots taking over a whole lot of the manufacturing processes. It means that there are new business models, new business opportunities, new collaboration, and energy management. Some of the things that are going to affect us in this new revolution called the 4th industrial revolution, some of the new areas include Internet of Things, cybersecurity, augmented reality, big data and data analytics, autonomous and advanced robotics, additive manufacturing, advanced simulation, cloud computing. You might wonder, what are these things? Some of these things are already happening today. With improvement in blockchain and cybersecurity, myself and you can sit down in our home, be able to have conversations with our medical doctor, and all of it is secured. We can be in different parts of the world. Well, I'm getting to measure my blood pressure, and my doctor may be located in Canada, or will have instant access to my readings of my blood pressure without me physically present. With cybersecurity, we have a secured network that makes all of this possible. I'll be talking solely on additive manufacturing today. You might have heard that robot is going to take a whole lot of job. Yes, robot is going to take over some of the processes in manufacturing as we move into the era of Industry 4.0. What I want to summarize here to you is that the opportunities are just starting. Industry 4.0 is just starting. The question I ask often is, how is Africa tapping into this new industrial revolution and new areas that are coming to us that will be here for at least the next 70 years? All right, I'll focus a lot on additive manufacturing, but I want to start by discussing how is it different by the normal manufacturing methods that we have today. The normal manufacturing method that has preceded or are still being used today, one of them is subtractive manufacturing. With subtractive manufacturing, you start with a material, and to be able to create a part, let's say you want to make an engine, a part for an engine of a car, you have to you will carve out your part from a bulk material that you have bought. What this means is the carving out process will lead to a lot of waste. And of course, it's time consuming. And lastly, if you're not careful, you may leave an excess on the part that is not really relevant, but because you're running out of time, you just feel like it's okay if it's there. With additive manufacturing, what we see is instead of removing material to be able to create the parts that you desire to have, you can build it in a layer by layer manner. How does this work? A part of this process is done digitally. You will 3D design your part. That 3D design data is sent to a 3D printer that now builds your part in a layer by layer manner. The layer by layer manner could depend on the use, or it could use plastic, it could use metal, it could use fibers, it could use powder, depending on the 3D printing process that you're working with. Okay, there are a couple of 3D printing processes, and I know oftentimes when people say 3D printing, you probably think it's just that tabletop 3D printer that they're talking about. There are 7 different categories of 3D printing. The one that we're familiar with today, which is the tabletop with fibers running around and printing plastic, is one, it falls under the 7 umbrellas of 3D printing. We have the umbrella that focuses on metal. We have the umbrellas that focuses on plastic. We have the areas that focuses on ceramic manufacturing. So the one you're familiar with is called FDM, and that's right here. It falls under material extrusion. And this process happened to be the most popular with 19% market reach to people today. However, there are other areas of additive manufacturing that are being used by different companies that you will hear about today. Why 3D printing? People always say if something is not broken, why fix it? If we have manufacturing process, we're already making cars, why do we have to switch to 3D printing? One of the things we're trying to do is expand, and we want to rethink manufacturing. One of the major reasons why the switch to 3D printing is rapid prototyping. During this COVID-19, so many people have ideas. They want to build a ventilator, and before you build a ventilator, you may want to make a prototype. Make a prototype and try that prototype. If that prototype needs optimization, you optimize it quickly, and then you make another one, you try it again. With 3D printing, we can conduct rapid prototype, which means product development can be faster and cheaper. So if I'm trying to build a ventilator, I can quickly design that ventilator on my computer, print a prototype of the ventilator quickly, take it to, maybe I have a board or my stakeholders to look at, we test it quickly. If it needs optimization, we can quickly optimize it. With 3D printing, this is extremely fast compared to conventional methods where you have to probably get a mold, and a mold can cost you sometimes up to 20,000. Imagine if you are still trying something out and you have to spend huge amount of money to be able to create a mold that you would use to make the product. That doesn't make any sense. That is time consuming, that is expensive. Apart from that, we also have other areas that additive manufacturing has contributed to, especially for us in different industries. For automotive industry and aerospace industry, one of the value proposition for us is part consolidation, the ability to consolidate multiple parts into one piece. The part that I'm showing here is 300 parts being consolidated into one single part. So what this means is, if usually there's 300 parts, you need bolts and nuts to hold all of them together. You need to weld each of those parts together to make a single part, 300 parts all bolted together, welded together. You don't need a welding process anymore. You don't need a bolt and the nut anymore. What that does is it reduces the size of your part. And this is very, very helpful when we're talking about durability. Because of the absence of bolts and nuts and weld, which can serve as crack initiation point, improved performance and durability is delivered because of 3D printing. Other areas, especially in medicine, is mass customization. With 3D printing, we're able to customize things for people. A knee implant can be customized to you. A teeth aligner can be customized to you. We can customize your skin graft for you. All of these things are making our lives better. We don't have to do a one-size-fits-all for you anymore. Based on who you are, your anatomy, how you look, we can customize items to make your life a little easier for you using 3D printing. And most of these customized items they're affordable. So affordable mass customization is one of the areas. There are other areas that I should be talking about, like aftermarket supply. So in Africa, this is very common. We buy used cars a lot. Imagine buying a Ford car that is 1997 model. And now the car has a problem. The engine part that you need is supposed to come from a company in China. And the China says, we no longer make that car. So we no longer produce that part. What would you do? With 3D printing, we can 3D print for you those parts that other manufacturer no longer even carry. We can 3D print it for you. This is an area that is very peculiar and very interesting for African market, especially when it comes to automotive or any other industry that are using parts. Lightweighting and complexity, I'll skip that because it's of time. The last one that I want to touch on is decentralization of supply chain. With 3D printing, we no longer have to say, I have to buy the part from China. I have to buy it from the US. What if instead of companies, sorry, I want to remove this thing making noise here. Sorry about that. So instead of having to transport items to Africa, to Asia, what if companies can plant 3D printers in Africa and we can be making those engine parts, we can be making those things that you need from Africa and ship it directly to consumers? What does this mean? We will shorten and decentralize manufacturing. So one area doesn't have to manufacture while the other areas are just consumers. So all of this value proposition that 3D printing brings to the table are the reason why different companies are adopting this technology and thinking about how can they implement it, add it to their supply chain to help them ensure that manufacturing is fast, is cost efficient, and is, of course, decentralized and customized to the customer's need. All right, for each companies, there are different adoption methods that people are taking. Like I said, it can be for concept models, it can be for rapid prototyping. It can also be used during other processes. It can be used during your manufacturing processes as a company. Maybe for automotive, we use it a lot for jigs and fixture, all of the items that we use on our shop floor when we're manufacturing cars. Or if you're thinking about aftermarket, which I just explained. So this slide is just a summary of the processes that I explained in terms of what are the areas that we're using 3D printing for. The use of 3D printing can be low volume or high volume. So you can just be making parts for 50 customers. 3D printing is still for you. Or you can be making parts for 2 million customers. 3D printing is still for you. So anyone can adopt this technology due to their business model. Definitely, it would fit in the right place. All right. I want to talk a bit about what type of materials are available that you can 3D print today. There are I told you there are 7 different technologies, 7 different areas of these technologies. There are different materials that today have been commercialized. There are some of those materials that are still in research, and some of them were still kind of in the ideation phases. Some of the materials that are already available on the market for all of those different areas of technology include thermoplastics. Thermoplastics are used everywhere, is one of the material that is used the most. So 3D printing is available for thermoplastics material. Photopolymers. So photopolymers are very used. They're used a whole lot for people who are trying to make customized item. So this technology have also embraced this material. Metals. Literally almost all the subgroups of 3D printing allows the use of metal materials. Ceramics, composites, biomaterials for medical applications, multi-materials, so having 2 materials together as one. And in fact, these days, there are opportunities to 3D print food. There are opportunities to 3D print concrete for building house. There are opportunities to 3D print sand and other things. There are opportunities to 3D print using paper. So there is no limit. Opportunities for 3D printing abound, from plastic to metal to even paper. There is no limit. There is no excuse for anyone to not think about, how do I adopt this technology and fit it into my business? How do I adopt this technology and fit it into my supply chain to cost costs, to make things faster, right? All right. I'll skip this. I wanted to show a bit of business case here, because oftentimes people wonder, how fast is what technology? How fast is the binder jet technology? How fast is the SLA technology? While you're trying to adopt this technology, this chart just shows you how long does it take to print or build anything per hour. A whole lot of this technology are still, some of them are still slow, but I want to assure you that the build rate for some of this technology is getting to a point where they are really fast. So depending on the product that you're trying to print, the material that you're trying to print, the technology may be fast or it may be slow. If you're trying to print something really large, the technology may be slow. If you're trying to print something with very high resolution, you want it really, really smooth, the technology may be a little slow, but it will still deliver to your expectations. So before selecting a technology, you want to think about which one works for you, the speed at which it can deliver, the resolution at which you need, and the material that are available. All right. Now, some of the good stuff in terms of how has additive manufacturing been used in this era of COVID-19? That's really why you're here. There are some areas where additive manufacturing has been the rescue channel. One of them is 3D printing of visors. You probably see these visors, people wearing something that looks like a shield, a face shield. A whole lot of, when COVID-19 hit, 3D printing makers went out there, a whole lot of us developed different types of shields, different type of shields. And because 3D printing allows us to customize, so we can make different sizes, different shapes, different holder in the back for these visors. This is one of the area where we as 3D printing engineer have pulled our weight. As soon as COVID-19 hit, PPE shortage was being mentioned. We went out there to start to print this. A lot of people developed businesses out of making of visors during the era of this COVID-19. As a woman in science, you are in Africa, you have a degree in mechanical or material, you're wondering, how can you participate? How can you help during this era of COVID-19? These visors, the designs that you need to print, a whole lot of it are already available online that is already designed for you. Well, a lot of makers design these visors, they put them online. All you need to do is download the visor, put it on the right printer, and you can start to make visors. This is one of the areas that 3D printing is contributing and has contributed during this COVID-19 intervention. Another one is the making of the mask, especially reusable mask. With 3D printing, we have developed different types of masks that are comfortable while wearing, but they are extremely reusable that people can wear. Another area is 3D printing of ventilators. especially here in the US, we started hearing about shortage of ventilators being an issue. A lot of different scientists swung into action right away. They created prototype. So you probably have heard in the news that companies such as 3M, such as Ford or GM, they're trying to manufacture 3D ventilators. This manufacturing, the prototype stage, is usually built using 3D printing. Why? It's faster. They can quickly test their ideas. If it doesn't work, they can tweak it very fast. So I also have seen a couple of development and inventions across Africa where young Africans are trying to create ventilators, especially during this COVID-19. A country that I could refer to is Rwanda. I think I have seen a very nice designed ventilator using a whole lot of 3D printed parts from Rwanda and also Senegal. So this is another area that makers, designers, developers are contributing on. And hopefully, even if we don't end up with having a mass-produced ventilators on the market, but there is already good designs that are smaller, that can be commercialized post-COVID, that were started using 3D printing. One area that has been extremely crucial during this time is 3D printed swabs. The swabs that are used during testing of COVID-19. A whole lot of manufacturers are switching over into making those swabs. Those swabs have become something rare to find. So with 3D printing, you can mass produce thousands of swabs at once for an hospital. So if someone is interested or someone is thinking, in my area, I want to support COVID-19 related work, manufacturing of swab is one of the areas that I will highly recommend because it's fast. You can mass produce a whole lot of it at once and supply to hospitals as they need them. I'm showing here a part of a respirator that was also, that is being 3D printed and used a lot in, it was used a lot in Italy. During COVID-19, there was high surge of COVID-19 in Italy, and because of that, they ran out of ventilators. So with this ventilator, you need to be able to have these disposable valves, and with 3D printing, we're able to print tons of all of this also at once. At once, you can print 50, 100, depending on the size of your printer, of this respiratory valve at once. The last one is dividing your ventilators to be used by 2 people. When we get to a point where the going get tough, the tough get going, one ventilator is supposed to serve 1 person. But during COVID-19, we know that there could be shortage of ventilators because especially in areas where there is shortage of medical facilities or amenities or any tools. With 3D printing, you can split that ability to use that ventilator and allow 2 people to use it instead of 1. If you're interested in any of these designs that I'm showing right here, all you need to do is go on Google. All of the designs are already available. You can download them and really start to 3D print this wherever you are. If you need to talk about this to be able to select what 3D printer will be ideal, what technology should you adopt, I'm very open to help you figure that out so that you can start making it. But here are some of the contributions that we have had as a 3D printing community for the intervention during COVID-19. Other things that is becoming very popular in Africa is adoption of 3D printing for various biomedical applications. I'm showing here a couple of biomedical applications for 3D printing. I want to highlight one of my mentees because the last speaker really spoke about mentorship. One of my mentees here is Nelly. She's in South Africa, and I remember meeting her about 2 years ago. She's a mechanical engineer trying to start a 3D printing company by herself. The first work that she embarked on was the making of prosthesis for breast cancer survivors. So she was making this augmented breast, prosthetic breast for people who has gone through mastectomy and selling it. In the process, she met me. We started talking about other opportunities apart from making this prosthesis. And then I introduced her and started advising on dental aligners. Today, when you want to help your teeth look nicer, people use braces. Some of these braces, you see them, they are metal, they're obvious. In this part of the world, we have started developing dental aligners that are clear. And with 3D printing, it is possible for you to be in your house and not leave your house. They send you a mold. You put that mold you put it in your mouth. The mold helps us to capture the anatomy of your teeth. You send it back to the manufacturer, and that person will make your aligner for you without you having to visit them. And within 3 to 4 days, you have your clear aligner. As she's smiling here, she's wearing a clear aligner to help her teeth, the gap in her teeth, clear. And this has been 3D printed. This is one of the business opportunities that 3D printing has that is currently being annexed by a young South African. For other women in science who are wondering, I don't have a job, I'm frustrated, this is an opportunity. There are opportunities that people in your neighborhood can utilize, that you can afford to start as a business, and she has done that. In our journey of trying out different 3D printing related items and selling them, she has been named one of Forbes 30 under 30 Africans, I think 2 years ago. So I want to encourage you that in the process of trying to innovate, you can stumble on fame in the process, especially when you're working on stuff like this that are new, innovative, and has impact and contribution to our economy. Another area that is becoming popular in Africa is 3D printed prosthetic leg, customized to your color, customized to the shape of your leg. That doesn't look weird. You see here a picture of someone wearing a 3D printed prosthetic leg with some electrical inside that leg. So the leg is not just a leg. It's a leg that can move. It's a leg that can be controlled. It's a leg that wouldn't just fail after 2 years or 3 years, systematically designed for that person to meet how they walk, to meet the amount of weight that they are going to put on that prosthetic leg. And another one that is becoming common is the myoelectric hand. So it's one thing to make a prosthetic. It's another thing to make a prosthetic that can actually communicate, that can move, that you can use to shake people. This is also an area that is open for adoption within Africa. Yes, it may not be during COVID-19, or it may be after, but these are opportunities that can be annexed by Africans, or that are currently being annexed by Africans who are working on 3D printing related to biomedical applications. The last one I want to highlight here is that the first deafness was cured. I wouldn't say cured. It was treated by a South African doctor using a 3D printed middle ear. With 3D printing, we are advancing. We are not only advancing, we are innovating, and we're doing work that are valuable. Other areas in biomedical engineering that 3D printing is taking effect include the printing of microneedles for patches. So if you're here, you're a woman, you wear any patch, maybe the patch could be for different things. It may be for diabetes maintenance, it may be for family planning. We have created, and people are working on micro needles, and in some cases, nano needles that are painless, that you can put on your body. You can shower, and these micro needles stay there. With 3D printing, this is a possibility. Skin graft manufacturing is also being researched by various researchers across the world. Using 3D printing, people are using skin from fishes and other things, and 3D printing them into graft, putting in people's cell. So your own cell goes into that skin graft. So the ability for your body to reject it is lower drastically. Other areas include the printing of bioorgans. For my PhD, I focused on manufacturing of articular cartilage using 3D printed scaffolds. So I make the scaffolds, I put cells within the scaffolds, and the scaffolds were multiphasic. So cells are in there, biomaterials that are stronger in there, biomaterials that are cell carriers are in there, all of it bioprinted together. And what we saw is that we were able to start to create cartilage tissues from that graft. So with 3D printing, there is multiple possibilities in terms of drug delivery, tissue engineering, biocompatible materials, and polymetric engineering that are being explored around the world. If anyone is listening today, you are interested in some of this research, I have a few connections here in the US and Canada. I'll be happy to introduce you to them to further explore how can you bring in your African thinking, your own ideas, and how can that be consolidated and utilized for development of different things and for helping us find solutions to some of the diseases and issues that are peculiar to the African continent. Other areas where the 3D printing has been used, including the aftermarket. I previously talked about how, especially in Africa where we buy a lot of used car, how we no longer have to do or to wait until somebody ship parts to us from China. With 3D printing in the automotive industry, on our assembly lines in our shop floor, this material here, this yellow color material, usually in some companies, this costs them thousands of dollars yearly to just buy those jigs and fixtures that they use to do little things. With 3D printing, we are able to print a whole lot of these things, fast, efficient, and cost-effective. I'm showing here a picture of how 3D printing is helping us to lightweight component. Imagine if your component used to be this big, and with 3D printing, we're able to make it this light. So lightweighting components, which can lead to fuel efficiency, is one of the areas that in automotive industry we are advancing today. This is my last slide. And this last slide is showing her the opportunities possible in the aerospace industry. With 3D printing, you can print a whole engine. And I'm showing you an example from GE. With General Electric, 855 parts was consolidated into 12 parts, and this led to 20% lower fuel burn and 5% weight reduction. I'm showing this here to challenge us as Africans, that the era where we just accept something is over. This era is the era of development. This era is the era of innovation. That as Africans, there are opportunities waiting for us to harness them. Opportunities in manufacturing are kicking in big time. And it is up to us to say we want to be contributors instead of consumers. This is the time, especially you're at home because of COVID-19, you can't go out. This is the time to think. This is the time to think about what contribution can I bring to the table. Because of 3D printing, we can lightweight, we can consolidate, we can redesign, we can reinvent. I hope some of us will jump in. I think I lied. This is my last slide. This talks about other areas that we have used 3D printing in. One of them is manufacturing of affordable and low-cost housing. This is a 2-story house that was 3D printed for a fraction of what it could have cost if you had built this by yourself. With 3D printing, manufacturing of housing is a thing. And this is something that as Africans, we must consider because the population of Africa will double by 2050. Affordable housing should be an area that different universities are researching, and 3D printing is one of the leading technologies that can help deliver affordable housing. Building of this house did not take more than 5 days. Building of this house cost a fraction of what it could have cost if manufactured with other methods. Lastly, as a Nigerian, going to Owambe, I don't know if you know what that means. Going to parties is a thing for us. Imagine when you get to a party, instead of somebody taking your picture, you enter a scanner. In 12 seconds, you got scanned. By the time you're leaving that party, they give you a figurine that shows exactly what you were wearing with your family when you were going into that party. With 3D printing, that is a possibility. A business waiting to be annexed in Africa, a business that can open the doors for multiple opportunities, and of course, business opportunities that will create economic empowerment for youths and women. Well, that is all I have for you today, and I'm ready to take questions if anyone has any.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adeola Lubamiji. Really appreciate your talk on 3D printing, advanced manufacturing, 3D printing applications in the COVID era.
Thank you.
Took us through the industrial revolutions, from the first to the fourth industrial revolution, and the new business models, Internet of Things, the big data, and also talked a lot on additive manufacturing technologies. I'm so excited because you're speaking a lot on my mind, as we have similar fields of research, fields of expertise. the value proposition of additive manufacturing, rethinking manufacturing, and also spoke about different materials in additive manufacturing. Also alluded to business case and selection and of applications, additive manufacturing, and also gave a lot of examples of various ways in which the additive manufacturing technology was used in response to COVID-19 pandemic and still being applied till today. Also mass customization and different biomedical applications, also in the aerospace, and lastly, in building, in the construction industry. These are really mind-blowing and highly insightful. Thank you so much for your talk this afternoon. Indeed, the additive manufacturing technology has really proven to have a lot of applications, and many of the engineers actually still saying that it is a technology for the future, that we are yet to actually harness a lot that it can do. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your talk. And then we look forward to further collaboration. I believe from the Q&A, you have opportunity to type in your email address so that people who are interested will be able to reach you, and also to other panelists as well that would like to be contacted. Thank you very much. And thanks to our participants still holding on there. We now move on to our speaker number 5 for this webinar this afternoon, and that is Professor Beatrice Simo-Kengbe. He is a professor at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. Over to you, Prof. Beatrice, and thank you for accepting our invitation this afternoon to be a speaker on this webinar. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. My appreciation to Prof. His Excellency Prof. Sarah, to Prof. Estelle, and for this opportunity. Thank you also to all the listeners. Allow me please to share my screen. Okay. Sorry. Okay, can you view my screen, please?
Yes, we can see your screen. Please proceed. Thank you. You just need to go to slideshow.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, that's all right. Thank you. I'm indeed honored to be given the opportunity to reflect on women's economic empowerment in Africa during COVID-19, and to share some concluding remarks on women economic position post-COVID-19. I will start with a famous quote by Jennifer Lopez that, open quote, "Doubt is a killer. You just have to know who you are and what you stand for," end quote. So I really believe that women economic empowerment will get strong, even though everything seems to be going wrong. Okay. My presentation will start with some sort of background on why women empowerment matters. Then I will proceed with some pre-existing economic gender inequality before I analyze the role of COVID-19 in exacerbating these inequality with their consequences on women's economic position. Then I will conclude with some risk and opportunity for women's economic participation post-COVID-19 era. So let's start from the definition. The United Nations Development Program define women empowerment as the possibility of expanding choices for women and increase their ability to exercise these choices. So this increasing strength should include all the aspects of women lives, that is spiritual, social, educational, political, gender and economic, but in my presentation, I will focus on economic. Now, why women empowerment matters? Well, women make about half of the world population, yet there is still gender discrimination. And what is more is that there has been an increasing number of missing women. And how do we define missing women? These are the sum of women missing at birth as a result of sex-selective abortion and excess female mortality through infanticide or poor treatment. So this number has been shown to increase from 61 million in 1970s to over 130 million in 2015. Therefore, considering that women empowerment has become one of the top priority for the development of society, actually it is not only a prerequisite for sustainable development, but also one of the sustainable development goals. So women empowerment participates to the process that enables sustainable development. And as I said, it is one of the sustainable development goals. Now, let's look at some pre-existing economic gender inequality. Women have less access to productive resources, be it education, land, technology, finance, and the list is quite long. And this results in low earning and bargaining power for women. Looking at some statistics, globally, women perform 66% of the world work, produce 50% of the food, yet earn only 10% of the income and own 1% of the property. In Africa, it's even worse. Women perform more than 76% of total hours of unpaid job. That is more than 3 times as much as men. And they own, only 37% of them have access to a bank account against 48% for men. What is even worse is that among poor households, 45% of African women do not have decision power on their own income. Therefore, there is a crucial lack of economic autonomy, and that restricts women's ability to develop their capabilities, to make strategic choices, and to improve their economic position. So because of gender discrimination, women are at greater risk during and in the aftermath of economic crisis, like the one we are experiencing currently, which has been initiated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now,
Since we lost Prof. Beatrice, and I hope she's able to connect back to us, bring her back on board. Without wasting time, while we wait for Prof. Beatrice to come back on board, we are going to move on to Q&A. Prof. Beatrice will have opportunity to finish her talk soon. The first question here, Mitch, please, when she's back on board, you let me know so that we can pause. The first question here goes to Her Excellency, Prof. Sarah Ayang Agbo. The question says, in most of the time, we see women reduced to dancers for the politicians. Do you think it is time that women liberate themselves? Her Excellency would like to answer this question. Over to you, Your Excellency, please.
Thank you very much. But I would like to applaud all the panelists. I'm proud of being a woman because you are a woman, and all of you are very in-depth in your fields. Your conversations were very insightful. On the question on women being dancers for politicians, I believe that African women, we should be overboard with this. And I'm sure that with the sensitization that we are having, and the discussion on equity in all aspects of life, women should go beyond this. And I believe that women are already liberating themselves. You know, in the African Union, we believe in equity. And that is why in the African Union, the commission is made of 5 male, 5 females. So that is how we do in the African Union because of the question of equity. And now if we have to talk about women being represented in all areas, why should women become dancers for the politicians? Women should not be dancers for the politicians because we also have the same acumen with the men. So if men can rule, women can equally rule. After all, the president of Ethiopia is a woman, and I'm proud that she is a woman. And one of our mentors in the African Women Leaders Network is Her Excellency from Liberia, who is leading us, Ellen Seffield. So we see that women are capable. The Commissioner for Political Affairs at the African Union is a woman, Her Excellency Ambassador Aminata Samate. The Commissioner for Social Affairs is a woman, Her Excellency Amira El Fadi. The Commissioner for Infrastructure and Energy is a woman, Her Excellency Dr. Abu Zaid. So I'm forgetting the names of my sisters. And then the Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture is also a woman, Her Excellency Ambassador Josepha Sako. So you see, women are not just dancers. And then we are doing mentorship because the chairperson's 1 million by 2021 initiative, where we speak about the 4 E's, the E of employment, the E of engagement, the E of entrepreneurship, and the E of education. Engagement speaks about a mentorship. So we should go beyond that, and we refuse to be dancers for politicians, because who are the politicians? They are men and they are women. So we also are politicians working towards the Africa we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We really appreciate your response to this question. One of the speakers would like to leave. That's Prof. Amal Amin. He has another engagement very, very soon. And looking through, before I bring back Prof. Beatrice, I'll bring it back very soon. And she has another engagement and would like to leave soon. Reading through the Q&A platform, there's no specific question for Prof. Amal. And so I just want to ask if there's any specific question for her. One quick one that we can take her question before she takes her leave, so that we can then go on to have Prof. Beatrice's question. Like that, I don't see any. Okay, there's no question coming through. Okay, Prof. Beatrice, we lost you, and sorry about the technical glitch. We'd like you to share your slide and please go on to where you stopped and then carry on. Thank you.
Sorry, I really apologize. I think it was a technical issue from my side. Okay, I'm not sure where I got lost from.
We stopped at pre-existing economic gender inequalities. Please go on to slideshow.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Slideshow, please.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah,
okay, thank you so much. So discussing some inequality. It is well known that women have less access to productive resources, whether education, land, technology, finance, and the list is quite long. And this results in low earning and bargaining power. Globally, women perform 66% of the world work, produce 50% of the food, but yet earn only 10% of the income and own only 1% of the property. In Africa, the statistic is quite alarming because women perform more than 76% of the total hour of unpaid job. That is 3 times as much as men. And only 37% of women have a bank account against 48% of household. 45% of African women do not have decision power on their own income. So all these result in the lack of economic autonomy which restricts women's ability to develop their capabilities, to make strategic choices, and improve their economic position. So because of these gender discriminations, women are at greater risk during and in the aftermath of economic crisis. So we all know that the pandemic comes with economic crisis. And this pandemic will have had different impact on men, women, boys, and girls. So consistently with the global statistic, men have recorded the highest fatality rate in Africa. So that rate stands around 62% for men compared to 38% for women. However, the Coalition for Women Economic Empowerment and Equality has observed that women and girls experience disproportionate effect due to gender discrimination, and this occurs in multiple fronts, be it in educational disruption, the care burden, the access to essential services, the land and property ownership and transfer of ownership, and the access to technology. Lastly, the disruption in income. So all of these have triggered women's vulnerabilities with negative consequences on their economic participation. But how? Let's see how this happened. First, start from the disruption in girls' education. It will result in unequal opportunities to improve their health, their education, and ultimately their earning prospect. Temporary school closure as a result of lockdown has led to permanent removal from school because of loss of educational infrastructure. One of which being the inability to pay school fees due to loss of income by families. You also have prices on families which may end in child marriage as coping mechanism, and this is well known. As you can see from this picture, during COVID-19, West and Central Africa has actually recorded a high number of child marriages. And then it is expected that 13 million additional child marriages might occur by 2013 in this part of Africa. And this part of Africa has 6 out of 10 countries with high prevalence of child marriage. Besides this, you also have the risk of adolescent pregnancy. So COVID-19 increases the risk of sexual violence as in any other type of crisis. And although we don't have empirical evidence, building from the past experience with Ebola crisis, which has resulted in 65% increase in adolescent pregnancy in Sierra Leone. So we expect a high rate of adolescent pregnancies as a result of COVID-19. Now, we also have an increased care burden for women and girls, and this reduces the time spent on income generating activities and businesses. So COVID-19 will have increased the care burden to include the care for sick and vulnerable elderly member of the family, to include also the children care and homeschooling during lockdown. Besides this, most of the health workers in Africa are women, and this is consistent with the global statistic. So similar to the past health crisis, Ebola, healthcare workers experience traumatic anxiety, depression, and due to this reduce their economic productivity or economic engagement. You also have domestic violence. The increase in domestic violence actually comes with emergencies that hinders women's economic participation. The UN Women Report observed in gender-based violence during COVID-19 outbreak, and this was mainly experienced in Eastern and Southern Africa countries, including Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, and South Africa. And the resultant trauma disorder prevent women and girls from engaging in economic activity. It also lowers their productivity and forces them to set control over earning to their abusers. So domestic violence related emergency, in addition to those, increase healthcare costs of women whose purchase power is already compromised by gender wage gap. So another aspect that comes with COVID-19 is the job losses and income disruption, which triggers women economic vulnerability during the pandemic. Women are overrepresented in informal sector, and this sector constitutes 90% of the sub-Saharan labor force. So, as women know, informal workers have low wages, and they face greater risk during pandemic crisis. And so, beside this one, even though those who are working in the formal sector are not spared, because the global literature documents significant decrease in both women formal employment and total labor force participation during economic crisis and financial crisis. So female in unemployment average in Africa, it's almost 10% compared to 7% of male in unemployment in 2019. And according to the International Labour Organization, this gap is expected to widen in 2020 with an estimated 22 million COVID-19 job losses in Africa. Something that women also use to adjust low income is remittances. But COVID-19 is expected to cost the African continent 18 billion of US dollar in remittances. That is about 21% decline. And women are known to be the majority of remittance recipient. Another risk that they have faced during COVID-19 was the disproportionate food insecurity. And this treat women because it comes with associated loss of income. COVID-19 has put extra strain on food security with greater impact on women because they represent half of the continent food grower and producer. And this undermines their capacity to respond and recover from crisis as primary caregivers for family, household, and community. So because of the global food supply disruption due to lockdown, then the economic advantages of women are being hindered because of the issue of land right that is already insecure for them. So with the increased COVID-19 male mortality, many widows, daughters, and divorced women are unable to claim ownership due to the tradition, to tradition or social norms. So this triggered the risk of violence and exploitation by male sharecroppers and financial services, since cultural norms in many African countries prevent women from harvesting the land they own. So women owners of small agribusiness actually incur further income losses due to the fact that lockdown resulted market closure will have affected them because they sell part of their agricultural product in local and informal market which could not be operated during COVID-19. So finally, you have gender digital gap, which negatively affect women's ability to adapt to online businesses. It is not that globally, women are 14% less likely to own a phone and 42% less likely to engage online. And Africa is the only continent where the technology gap has widened since 2013. And this digital divide affects both women employees and women entrepreneurs. As women employees, the digital divide prevents them to engage in remote. And as an entrepreneur, the digital illiteracy make it difficult for them to transition to e-commerce in terms of social distance. And this negatively affects the survival of women-led firms, most of which are already informal and financially vulnerable. Therefore, COVID-19 has exacerbated economic gender inequality. But of greater concern are post-COVID-19 threats for women economic empowerment, some of which include the risk of reducing financial assistance program for women. Actually, there is uncertainty on investment in global women economic empowerment because some donors are being affected financially. So what used to be invested for women, those programs that used to support women empowerment are not able, or at best might receive only part of the support that they used to receive. And you also have the risk of gender blind planning by government and businesses. So in countries where gender equality is still far from being achieved, therefore, there is a risk that the recovery gender issue. So the risk of gender exclusive recovery policy, economic policy, informal sector and small and medium enterprises where most of the women operate might not be eligible for government initiative and support program post-COVID-19. And this is a serious threat for their economic empowerment. Women might also be perceived as less valid recipients, according to Bear and Hill, if those who are making decisions are mostly men. We might also face the risk of rollback gains in women's economic participation. What we have achieved so far might have gone back. So women may face risks of a new normal, for instance, or to return to all normal that prioritizes male employees in the allocation of work, rehiring, and promotion processes. There's also the risk that working from home could become a new form of home-based work, which Delaney and all found to be highly feminized and insecure. But COVID-19 comes also with some positive externality, depending on the recovery strategy. So a few empowerment strategy, and the key word for this revision is sustainability. How can we ensure that women empowerment strategy are sustainable? This can be improved. This can be achieved by improving women leadership position. It was actually quite surprising to see that with the outbreak of COVID-19, 13 countries only out of 53 countries in Africa have female health ministers. And out of the 13, only 9 of them had study health, has study health. And we also need to improve male involvement in women economic empowerment. Although the dialogue has started, but we need to make sure that it is effective. So women empowerment should not be seen as gender segregation, but gender unity, where male play an important role. And to achieve this, we can actually remodel the gender norm using education channel. So integrating, for instance, gender role in school curriculum might help. Obviously, education is not only end from school, everything starts from home. So we need also to promote gender equitable environment in raising children. And this speaks directly to women. When raising the children, they should make an effort to let them know that actually boys are different from girls. I mean, if boys are different from girls in terms of, let's say, physical strength, that physical strength should not be used to abuse the girls, but to protect the girls. So if that dialogue is started at home and emphasized at school, then we are able to reshape the future. So we also have an opportunity to boost sustainable development goals. As said initially, women empowerment is not only a prerequisite to sustainable development, it's actually one of the sustainable development goals. And to achieve that, post-COVID-19 offered the possibility to go for inclusive recovery strategies and to provide economic support to SMEs targeting women entrepreneurs, giving their resilience capacity during crisis. So it is well known that women entrepreneurs most of the time are in informal sector or actually lead small and medium enterprises. And those enterprises are those who are not qualified for grant support because government tends to emphasize on big firms. So this is the opportunity to see that with the resilience capacity of women entrepreneurs, many things can be achieved if they are given the support. So this opportunity looks hard, but I believe that where there is a will, there is a way. And I end my presentation here with some references. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Beatrice. Really appreciate your talk this afternoon. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be a part of this. And we really appreciate your talk on women empowerment, economic empowerment in particular. Why women empowerment is very, very important. And the pre-existing economic gender inequalities that are already existing, the COVID-19 impact on women's economic position, food insecurity that we need to take a closer look at, the technology to also try to close the technology gap on the African continent. I'm actually surprised at your data on women owning a phone and being on the internet. I've always had the perspective that more women had phones than the men, and that it seems we are more social and we have more time to be on the internet and also on our phones as well, engaging online. Then gender exclusive recovery, economic policies, and also the new normal lifestyle, working from home and virtual and all of that. Also your insight on post-COVID opportunities and recommendations for women's economic participation. That was a great insight for me, and I believe for all participants as well. And the fact that we need to remodel the gender norm. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it this afternoon.
Thank you.
On this note, we have now taken all the 5 speakers. We now move on to the question and answers. We have a number of questions, and I see that some of the speakers have actually answered some of the questions, and some are also comments on the Q&A. It's scary that a food pandemic is looming, but gratifying to note that women are at the forefront in suggesting strategies for preparedness. Excellent insight by Dr. Katerina and Prof. Amar. Good. To Dr. Adeola, 3D for animal feed, do you have an answer for that?
No, I don't. At the moment, I don't really see the opportunity, but I also believe that maybe because I don't know that field too much, maybe if I have a little bit of exposure as to what is being done, then I can make a proposition as to how 3D printing can fit in.
Perhaps looking into the machineries, the equipment that is being used for animal feeds and all of that. So I think this person might need to reach out to you for more insight on that.
Yes, I'd like to say if the person can maybe do a video call with me and work me through what they do, I can see some prospects there and make a proposition as to how this can fit in, but I believe there should be an opportunity there.
Thank you very much. We also have comments from Phyllis Shetan on a huge investment of about $40 billion on a project on LAX that is currently ongoing in the USA. And then how is church involved in women empowerment? Who will answer this question? Women empowerment, Professor, women empowerment generally. Prof. Mary, would you like to answer that question? I think you mentioned that, I remember. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much. I think from my experience, women are empowered through the church by specific development programs, like just the way we have community-based organizations, we have faith-based organizations. So when the development programs come, the church actually empowers these women to come and develop those projects that will be income generating and also health. They come in different aspects, agriculturalists come in, and also health experts and other areas of concern. Even now with this COVID coming in, the faith-based organization are also playing a part, being trained, being capacity built, and also being given the knowledge to handle such issues and to make money. That's what I have seen from my experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you again. Someone talking?
It's Sarah.
Oh yeah, Your Excellency. Over to you, ma.
I very much appreciate the angle Professor Mary Abukutsa Onyango had taken. But again, you know that in addition, you know, in churches, we have like women groups. And those women groups, like you have the Catholic Women Association, the Christian Women Fellowship for Presbyterians, and in all church groups, we have different organizations. And they have a weekly meeting that they meet. But that weekly meeting is not only based on reading the Bible, it is also on sharing experiences, on mentorship, on engagement, on visitation of the sick, etc. So when we meet with one another like that, we're able to empower ourselves. You know, I don't know who was speaking, and there's one thing the person said that I was going to, is it plagiarize? I will look for it, but I was going to use it in my closing. What that person said to me was very important. We ourselves as women need to capacitate and empower women. When Dr. Adeola, I'm already giving Professor Shipo Adeola, when Professor Adeola Lubamiji was speaking, I was so proud. The way she was speaking about 3D manufacturing, additive, subtractive, etc. It was like I was in the classroom, and she demystified the subject until I've written something here for you, Professor Titilayo Akinlabi, that how do we bring up a master course as we are reviewing? Because these are the things that lead to the future of work. How do we bring up a master course for the Pan-African University so that we could have our own kids to recalibrate their profession and give them a future for the job they need to do? And you see, there's much money in it. Look at the different hypotheses that she has laid, up to breasts, legs, mass, etc. So even me, I'm thinking of going into, is it additive manufacturing? Even though I'm a different person.
Very interesting. So Your Excellency, I've noted that, and I will speak with my colleague, Prof. Magoma in Kenya. We need to run that program in Kenya. We can also run a power lesson anyway, because additive manufacturing has application to health and agriculture. So the programs we have in power lesson, we can conveniently run a master's degree qualification in additive manufacturing. It's multidisciplinary. So, however, we'll take this advice up with the rectorate and also discuss with Prof. Magoma as well. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
I see a number of questions have been answered. I want Dr. Adeola to speak to the quality of the house that is the one that is printed through 3D and the one that we use model blocks. What do you see to the quality? What is the integrity? Yeah, please go ahead.
I think the opportunity to conduct advanced simulation is helping us to understand structurally what do we need to deliver. Before you build anything, you will design it. And after you design it, you run different types of simulation to help you understand what are the fatigue properties you should consider. What should you do to reinforce if you're doing a building? What should I do to reinforce it? If rain happens for 30 years on this building, and this is the intensity of that rain. What will happen to my building? You can simulate that, right? And once you simulate that, you consider what are the possible reinforcements that I need to do to make sure that over that 30 years, my house is going to still be standing. All of the things we are doing before we print anything, we always run simulations. And with those simulations, we are able to enhance durability, enhance the integrity of the product before they are actually printed. And I think this has been how we approach it. So I can say, because of the advancement in innovation, the quality of houses, of products that we are delivering today are far better than it was before, because of the ability to do advanced simulation. I want to add a few remarks here. I have a couple of colleagues, some of them are Africans, some of them are friends of Africa, who are in additive manufacturing. One of the things that we can do, at least before we start the master's program, is if we have opportunities to be adjunct professors, right? Where we can come in once a year, do a 3-week course, or we can even co-supervise students who are back home, and we can connect them to universities here. And some of them don't even need connection. They just need a co-supervisor who is in this field to help them while they are doing their research back home, to improve the quality of research going on in our universities. I at least can put together a cohort of at least 20 experts in additive manufacturing, Blacks and non-Blacks, who can really contribute to whatever you're doing in your university if it focuses on that. Because some of the questions on here are people saying, I'm a master's student, I'm a professor, and how do I get in? We can help by contributing without even having to leave our location. And whenever the master's degree is ready, I will be very happy to be a part of it.
You are going to be the coordinator. Thank you very much, Adeola. Really appreciate you this afternoon. I see a number of people on the Q&A asking for your contact details. I see you have recruited a number of mentees this afternoon. Many people are saying, oh, I'm a master's student of PAU and all of that from Kenya and all over. So please leave your details in the Q&A for those who are interested to enroll as your mentees. Yeah, that is really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. So I think most of the questions have now been taken care of, and I now have the honor to invite Her Excellency Prof. Sarah Anyang Agbo, the Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology, and the acting chairperson of the African Union Commission, for her closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot say thank you enough to all our beautiful, elegant, charismatic panelists. I'm proud to be a woman because of you. In the fields that you have spoken on, you have shown your expertise. And I see that for the empowerment of the African woman that we want, it has to be a holistic journey. So it is my pleasure once again to close the session. I'm delighted with insights from all the presenters. Today's webinar also featured what the youth is doing and lessons that can be learned by the young ones as we all join hands to fight COVID-19. Yes, it is also important, as we have heard this afternoon, that COVID has affected our economies, and it will require concerted efforts and empowerment to sustain our future. I have the confidence that our deliberations here will not end as rhetorics, but will be followed with actions to impact on our society. And that is why I'm proud of the students who have joined, who are already asking different panelists for their contact information. On this note, I would like again to thank my sisters, Professor Beatrice Simo Kenye, Dr. Katerina Krepel, Professor Mary Abukutsa Oyango, Professor Amal Amin, and Dr. Adeola Lubamiji, our young scientists. Thanks to all the participants for joining us this afternoon. I want to also thank my colleagues, Dr. Monica Idinoba, Mr. Mitchell Owusu, Chris Malanda, and of course, our moderator, eloquent Professor Esther Akilabi, for organizing this webinar series. This webinar series cannot be successful without the contribution from each and every one of us. That is why in Africa, we say a tree does not make a forest, and one hand cannot tie a bundle. I wish you all safety and good successes in all your endeavors. I pray that you and your family keep safe and stay safe from this COVID-19.